Hi guys, happy Monday. I hope all of you guys are doing well, and I hope you guys had a beautiful weekend, and I hope you guys had a wonderful start to your week. So I'm so excited to be on here live, and I have my friend Victor joining me in a little bit, and we're going to be talking about the question of, I feel like I can never get this question in my mind, or like stuck in my mind. So the question is what we perceive reality or just a construct in our mind? And we had a conversation about it last week, and so many other things popped up, and I'm excited to see what comes up through this conversation as we're talking, and also excited to see what else you guys think about it. And yeah, so I'm excited. So let me see if I can get him on here. Hold on. I don't know. Okay, so we're gonna wait because he is not on here just yet, and I can only invite him when he's on. So this idea, actually, we were gonna do a tea time. So this is open to anybody. So if you guys have a concept, a question that you would love for me to talk about on Tea Time Thursday, like, let me know, shoot me a message. And he actually asked me this, and I was like, hey, let's just do a live tea time, come and join me. And he was working, so he couldn't do it, so I was like, fuck it, let's just do it some other time, still live, and he was down for it. So, or maybe he's not, because he's not popping up on here, so we'll see. But nonetheless, I'm pretty excited. So I don't know if I should. Okay, it's fine. Let's see. Let me see. Not yet. And so I hope all of you guys are doing well. I took a break from life coaching, and I started again today, and I had a really good session, so I'm pretty excited, and he is on. So let me ask him to join. I'm waving. Invite. And I'm so excited. Hey!
Hey, Nariva.
How are you?
Good, and yourself?
I'm good. It's so good to see you. I actually haven't seen you in years.
A couple of years, right?
Yeah, I think last time I saw you was maybe a couple of months before I went to Vietnam, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, hold on, let me fix this really quick. Okay. So I'm excited. So we are talking, so this is Victor, this is my friend. Somebody's like, woohoo, heck yeah, woohoo.
So we have Richard and an Angel up in here.
Okay, hi Richard, hi Angel. Hope you guys are doing well. So yeah, so the question that we're going to be talking about is what we perceive reality or just a construct in our mind, which is a pretty really cool question to ask and to get into.
Right.
So many ways. So that's what I was just sharing, how we talked about it last week, and it went so many other ways.
Yeah, we went into a rabbit hole for sure.
Yeah. Which are pretty fun to get into. And I wanted to share like the definition of reality just for whoever's watching now, whoever watches this later. Because I was looking it up on Google, and this is what I got. So I got the world or the state of things as they actually exist, the quality or state of being real. And I got another definition that says it means everything that appears to our five senses. And it talked about our problem, what about electrons? Like, going back to the question of is what we perceive reality or just a construct in our mind? So what do you think? Let's open
Right, so here's the thing, right? So we gotta understand what reality really is, right? So what some people don't know, which I didn't know, I was one of them, there's actually three types of reality, right? So if we go further in depth, right, let me just pull it up right here real quick.
Okay.
Let's see, move this out of the way. Okay, so we have, so first of all, like you said, you gave the definition, right? So reality is created in the mind, right? We create our own reality. Um, and we create our own reality using the process of perception, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's three types of realities. The first one is objective, the second one is subjective, and then the third one is intersubjective reality. Now, where it gets kind of iffy, well, how we were talking about last week, is intersubjective, because it kind of seems like it's on the same level of subjective reality, right?
Yeah.
And so for us to understand, we got to go into the definition of each one, right? So how we were talking last week, objective reality means something that we can explain, something that we can see, taste, hear, using the five senses, as you mentioned, right? So then we go into subjective reality, which is it says it's dependent upon opinion and perspective. That's where things get tricky. So I have an actual example here that I pulled up. So let's say you tweaked your knee while hiking, right? And then you go to the hospital and they give you a chart and they ask you, okay, well, from 1 to 10, what's your pain level, right? And so to different people, it could be different numbers depending on if you have previous experience with that kind of pain, you know, maybe a broken ankle or a sprained knee or whatever, whatnot, right? But if you've never broken your leg before, you can't really, you know, like really describe the type of pain that you really are. You're just gonna give a number that you feel best, you know, serves it right? And so let's say, you know, so it says if you've never so much as sprained an ankle, you might describe your knee pain as a 10. If, however, you've given birth drug-free or suffered traumatic injuries before, you're more likely to say your knee pain ranks somewhere lower on the scale because you already have something to compare it to, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where kind of like subjective reality goes in. And then intersubjective reality, that's the one that's really iffy. And me, myself, I'm not really still understanding it completely. I definitely need to go more in depth. And so now that we have an idea of how many types of different realities there are, now we can kind of get into more in depth of what we think, right? And so
because I knew you defined subjective and objective, could you define what was the other one? The third one? Intersubjective.
Intersubjective, yeah.
What you looked up, what does that say the definition is?
For intersubjective?
Yeah.
Okay, so for intersubjective, let's see. So like it says right here, intersubjective reality is a special subset of subjective reality. So it's almost like in the same tree, but a little bit different. Okay. It describes things that exist because we collectively believe they exist, to the point where we would almost consider them objective reality. So we could consider it as being real, right? And so what it says here is some examples include like money, religion, fame, and celebrity, and also loss, right? So it kind of goes into depth here as, you know, just because somebody doesn't believe in the laws doesn't mean that they'll get away with it if they break them, right? You know, you can't get away with without consequences, as to say. So that's kind of what intersubjective reality is.
Okay. Thank you for defining.
Yeah.
So
of course.
From those three definitions, which was super interesting because you mentioned that last time, and I was like, oh, I didn't know that. Like, I didn't know those three were, or maybe I never really thought of it, that they were part of reality. You know, like a while back, my friend and I were in Italy, and we saw this quote, and it said something along the lines of, the way that we view the world is either subjective or objective. Just pondering on it, like, oh, like, what does it mean? What does that mean? Like, more into it. So yeah. So then with definitions, what would you say? Like, do you think that our minds, I can never get the question for some reason, like, do you think that it's reality? Or do you think it's just like a construct of our mind?
You know what? obviously, we can tell the difference between objective and subjective, right? And so,
Uh-huh.
but I think there's definitely something else. Like, how was I think it was a philosopher that said something like, you got to understand that you really know nothing, right? So how is it that we can actually say that we know that what we are seeing, what we are touching, what we are smelling, what we are tasting is actually real?
Yeah.
It's all due to the process of perception. And so, kind of like how we were, I give you that example. So let's say, like, me and you go on a trip. We both have a house. And we both have a career somewhere in another state, right? Then we come back and both of our houses burn down. I could be the one to my perspective could go somewhere in the negative mind and say, why me? Why is this happening to me? Now I got to deal with this. Now I can't go and take that other job that I really wanted to. Whereas you, on the other hand, might see it as different. Your perception might be, well, maybe this is a sign from God or whatever you believe in, that, oh, it's telling me that it's time to actually go, and pursue this other career. So we can be in the same situation, but we can perceive it in different ways, right? And so I
Uh-huh.
don't know, like there's been times where, like, I've thought about it and I'm like, is what I'm perceiving actually real? Because, sometimes, I don't know if you've gotten this feeling before, but I have, where, like, I start looking at myself and I'm like, how is it that I can move my fingers? How is it that I can speak and communicate with other people? How is it that, sometimes instinctively you kind of know when something is going to go bad or wrong, or, something is not right. You know what I mean? Like, how do we feel these things? You know what I mean? And that goes to show with anything, like anything in the world, like how do birds know when to, fly, or when to, migrate, and which way? It's just, everything is so very, what's the word I'm looking for? Everything is very it's very hard to understand until you really start looking at yourself and the world as it is. Sometimes we gotta think outside of the box to kind of understand things.
Um, oh, we have a comment. I wanted to say really quick, yeah, because even with I'll read that in a little bit, but
Yeah, yeah.
even with the example of the house and the way that we would come back and the way we would perceive it, like something that popped up even through our conversations is how somehow even the way that we react could be also a construct of how we're so used to reacting. So maybe we both
Mm,
have different backgrounds, or maybe our minds are wired differently, where there is this pattern that you reacted in that space of, oh man, like shit, like it's not gonna work out anymore. And then I reacted more in a positive, like, okay, maybe it's just meant to be. And I was
mm,
thinking about that and I was like, oh, maybe that's another perception of the construct of our mind, where it's not just objective, I guess, where like the sky is blue, or maybe subjective of this is right or wrong, but it's
mm,
also another construct of how we're so used to living, or how we grew up, if that
right.
makes sense. Because even now, like I'm going through, I like every year, right? Like all of us, like we go through change and we go through like growth spurts internally, externally, and this past year, it's like, oh, like I'm so used to seeing this situation this way, I can see it differently. And even though
Mm,
it feels a little fuzzy, it goes back to, oh, my mind's constructing it that way because that's the only way that I've ever seen it. And I know there's a
right.
different way. I don't exactly know how just yet. You know?
Hmm.
Somebody
No,
commented, they said, I studied this in philosophy. I believe it was Des I'm gonna say this, totally pronounce it wrong. Des
hmm.
that said
Descartes?
Descartes.
I think so.
Okay, that said, I
Mm,
think, therefore I am. He was a big believer in subjective reality, but there was a philosopher
mm,
who didn't even believe in objective reality because, like your eyes, play tricks on you, and you can physically misperceive things. Mm, yeah,
that is
that
definitely true.
somebody actually messaged me, and it relates to that. So I'm gonna have to share that because
Mm,
it's true. Like our eyes also play tricks on us. Oh, and she actually just joined us. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna do that soon. But there's a book that I was reading called "You Are the Universe" by Deepak Chopra, and
Hmm.
I think I mentioned this to you on the phone, where he mentions how if something falls in another room, there's no noise, but if we're in that room and something falls, we can hear it, and how
Hmm.
the idea of it is that it's our own bodies creating the noise. It's not outside, it's more the vibrations of that object falling and our eardrums
Hmm.
perceiving it that's creating the noise. But in reality,
Yeah.
there is, which is super interesting.
Right.
Because it goes back to like not so much our ears are tricking us, but back to this idea that our bodies are perceiving it. And earlier, it was interesting because I was looking this up again too, and they were talking about how, like, we all see that the sky is blue, but then somebody who's colorblind doesn't see any color. So, what's the reality of it?
Well,
You know?
so little known fact about me, I'm actually colorblind. But I do see
Are you?
color. It's just yeah, it's just like I think I believe it's red and green, which I like always fucking mix for some reason.
Okay.
And it also depends on like the material that it's in, because something that I know for sure will be like, oh, that's blue, but in another color, in another let's say in a car or in a building or a shirt, it varies, right? And so sometimes I confuse those colors too. Um,
Oh, that's.
but yeah, I definitely see what you're saying though.
So it kind of questions the idea of like what is reality. Let me share this with you guys because what Snake Charm 11 said connects with my friend's message.
Hmm.
Okay, Esley, I'm going to share your message. So it says, so she thought it was both, right? So again, the question is what we perceive reality or just a construct in our mind? And this is what she said. I said both because many things in the world are a construct of our society, in fact, not making them real, but are made real because people believe it and follow it. Also, sometimes we make up things in our mind to make us feel better, or we make up things in our mind that are not real, but our fears lead us to believe they are real. And sometimes are simply just real because we are alive and breathing. The things we see and experience are real because they make us feel and cause emotions in us. So something that connected with her message and what Snake Charm 11 said was
Yeah.
ooh, how our eyes can play tricks on us.
Hmm.
So it brought me back to this message of, or our mind also can not play tricks on us, but can also create something to make us feel better or to make us feel safe
Right,
or
right.
XYZ.
Hmm. So it kind of goes into like, obviously the first thing that comes into my mind is religion, right? Right?
Is
Because
what?
religion.
Religion. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So like a lot of people really are like very, very centered in religion, and other people are very skeptical because you could argue that, okay, well, just because somebody wrote the Bible doesn't mean it actually happened, and one of the biggest ones that I've heard is, well, who wrote the Bible? Well, people. Well, people can be deceitful. You know what I mean? So, not, and we can't really just trust everybody and what they say. We got to take everything with a grain of salt, of course, and then obviously do our due diligence into researching these topics, which I feel nowadays is more like, you read something and you already kind of believe it, and a lot of people don't do their research, and then it turns out that the information was actually not true because they didn't have the full facts. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's actually very interesting what she said. I can. She definitely is describing what the difference between objective and subjective reality could be.
Something to go back to with what you're saying about religion, and something that I've experienced too within the last couple of years is that you can do so much research, and there is truth when you find research or when you hear others. And I realized that another part is your feeling. And you kind of went into it earlier of your intuition, right? Like, how do the birds know when to fly like south or north? And something
Right.
that of what you just said is that when we're doing research or when we're hearing others, I totally agree. Take everything with a grain of salt because that's their experiences. and connecting back with how you're feeling. Like, does it resonate with you? Does it not resonate with you? Does it feel good? Like, can you connect to it? And I think maybe there's part of like, maybe there's that truth for yourself or that reality for
Mhm.
yourself, you
Right.
know?
So I think
Yeah.
that's where the power of perception comes in, right? Because something that makes sense to you might not really make sense to me, or something that works out for me might not necessarily work out for you. I think it also depends on where you're at in life, of course. One thing that I'm starting to understand is, most of us we're a product of our environment, and not necessarily that's exactly what we believe. And what I mean by that is, like Catholics, growing up, we didn't get to choose our religion. Our religion was already chosen for us, right? Without us knowing. So, it's like somebody says, oh, fire is hot, right? Well, if you've never touched it before, how do you know it's hot? But you might end up believing that it's hot because a lot of people are telling you what it is, right?
Yeah, that's
Without
what
you actually,
like you grew up with
right?
reality.
Exactly. And so it's all due to perception and how you see things. But yeah, I can definitely see what you're
I have
saying.
I have another question, but before I ask that, let
Hmm.
me read. The snake charm 11 said true and more everyday things can include how many times did you think you felt your phone vibrate? How many times did you think you heard someone call your name but nobody did? Julian said, "What's up?
Mm.
What's up, Victor?" Hey, cousin.
What's good,
And then
Julian?
he said, Vic, we've had that conversation regarding something as simple as positivity. Mm.
Yes, yes. Yeah, so Nicole Snake Charm, she's actually a good friend of mine. And we've
Hi,
kind of
Nicole.
touched on that subject before.
Okay.
But yeah. Yeah, it's
I have another that's coming up right now is um and for anybody too to answer like universal truth. Like is
Mhm,
that part of reality? Like earlier I read something where it said how our bodies are only capable of understanding so much that we'll never really understand the truths of reality or get a feel of it. But then
mhm,
something that pops up are universal truths like the feeling of love,
mhm,
or for anybody who's tried psychedelics or been in that space, like a lot of us have, and I have, right? And a lot of us have that same experience of infinite love or expansion or something bigger than you. And it makes
mhm.
me wonder, like, could that be perceived as reality? That's just
Um, Maybe, but I just feel like we all perceive certain things very differently. Even in certain in certain same situations, we perceive things so differently. So I don't know. I don't know about the universal reality. I don't know about that.
okay. Or I guess I call
Yeah.
them, or maybe topic, but I guess
Uh,
the way that it like universal truths are kind of like that intuition. Same thing goes back. The
right.
intuition feeling,
Right.
the birds knowing where to fly
Hmm.
when, or us when to walk away. You know, like
Right.
all of us feel that intuition feeling. So
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. That I agree. Sometimes we feel things that are very similar, and it's like it's crazy. Like to go into like more depth into certain things. It's like how do things like animals and or us as well, how do we know when something is like, sometimes you get like your gut feeling like, maybe I shouldn't do this, and then you still go ahead, and then you're like, fuck, I shouldn't have done it because you had a feeling, right?
oh
And so it's kind of hard to like explain what that is and why we have that. You know what I mean? Maybe it's just something that's already instilled in us, that to kind of help us navigate through life. And sometimes maybe when we listen to our instincts, we avoid certain situations or certain problems. You know what I mean?
yeah, it's like it feels like it's the internal compass, like that
Yeah.
intuition feeling. And you're right, like it guides us, and sometimes we don't listen.
But
Yeah.
I think that's where meditation comes in handy too, because you gotta have a deep understanding of who you are as a person for you to be able to be in tune with all those feelings that you feel. Because most of us, we don't like to feel those feelings, or sometimes we're too busy with our lives, work, our family, or anything in life, and we tend to kind of move away from actually working on ourselves and our minds and our personalities and stuff like that. So I think first and foremost, we got to be in tune with ourselves, and I think meditation is definitely a good thing to do, and it helps us along the way as well.
Yeah, you're right. Like connecting with ourselves, because I think you're right. People do get lost in the everyday life struggles, challenges, and so many other stuff, which is understandable. But it's
Mhm.
creating that space to connect with yourself. And
Right.
you're so like the more you do that, the more your intuition becomes more clear,
Hmm.
and you can hear it more. Or you, even though you don't know what it is,
Hmm.
it's more apparent. Like okay, like there's that voice, or there's that whisper, that feeling.
Yeah, definitely.
A.
And so we have.
Garcia said, how about deja vu? Some people believe it's a glitch of reality, and some believe we've been in that situation before that brings back that feeling of another time. Ooh, deja vus. I
That's a
remember,
good one.
I remember for the longest time, like being a kid and thinking,
Hmm.
or even like a teenager thinking, oh, I've been here before. And that's all I would think of, like, oh, I just had a deja vu, like I've been here before.
Right. So do you feel like you were there before, or it's like him, like he's saying like it might have been a glitch in reality? What do you think?
No, the way that I've perceived it is the second one, where now that there's
Oh,
a
okay.
glitch of reality, I've never actually thought of that. So maybe that's something to ponder on. But
Yeah.
it's always straight to, oh, I've been here before.
Hmm. So I guess
What about
me, it's kind of iffy. So it's funny that he brings that up because I just read something. So let's see. I think we have enough. Yeah. So I read somewhere, and this it's a crazy theory, but it makes me wonder, what if it's real? It would be very fucking weird. So I read somewhere that you know, how they say like when people are about to die, they see a white light and they say, "Don't go into the light because you're gonna die." Okay, well, there was a theory where it says,
I
well,
know
that
what?
light, right? Like, a theory was like people were saying that that light was actually us coming out of the womb because we're being born somewhere else in another reality, and so the reason why we are born crying is because we actually remember our past, and we remember how we died and the things that we are losing and the family members that we're never going to see. And so as we're growing up, we forget our past life, and now we are more focused on the present, right? And so when I read that, it actually blew my mind. I was just like, what if that's actually real? You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of people that believe in the reincarnation, so maybe that goes hand in hand. I don't know.
Yeah, that's funny that you're saying that, because I believe in that. Like I believe in reincarnation, and I believe that if we do the work, how you're saying earlier, like connecting with ourselves, I feel like there
Hmm.
could be more deeper work where you become aware of your past life.
Right.
And I actually work with a synergist, and she's mentioned how she's aware of her past life. So I believe in that. Like, okay, if you do enough work, you can get
Hmm.
glimpses. But that's an interesting.
It,
I've never heard of that either. Where when you're born, you're crying, or when you're dying, that part actually, when you're dying,
yeah.
and you see the light, you're being born into another reality. I thought you'd go
Hmm.
someplace and they give you the choice, like, where to next, and then
Where's it
you.
like? What do you want to be? You want to be a human being again, or what do you want to be? You know what I mean? And that's,
Yeah.
who
So
knows?
here's
Who knows?
another. We'll be having this conversation on our next life.
Right.
Or okay, let's see. So we're almost out of time. So let's ask, or let me say this snake. She said her
Hmm.
name's Nicole, right? Or you said her name's
Nicole,
Nicole.
yes. Hmm.
So what would those be? What? or would those be examples of inner subjective reality, the inner voice, consciousness, or intuition?
Would that be intersubjective? I don't know, because that could either be intersubjective or subjective. You know what I mean? Because who's to say that you're actually hearing those voices? I don't know that. I'm not hearing them. You are, right? And so I think that could definitely fit into either category. It would be either subjective or intersubjective, of course. Yeah.
Okay, I think I would have to learn more about what intersubjective reality is. But if I were to choose like objective or subjective, I think the feeling or the idea that everybody has an inner voice or an intuition or consciousness, I think that's objective. Like everybody has that. I think
Yeah.
with what it says, it might be subjective, but I think the intention with the inner voice, consciousness, and intuition is to guide us to the places we're meant to be. So maybe that can fall back to objective.
That too. Yeah. That's definitely a good one right there.
Huh?
I said that was a really good one right there.
Yeah.
Whether it is intersubjective. That's kind of iffy.
Yeah, I'm gonna look that up more.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, so we only have 30 minutes. That's how far I've gone with these videos. So does anybody have any other question? Or Victor, is there anything else that you would like to share?
No, I think we've touched most of the topic today.
I feel like we can totally keep going.
We can keep going, but we'll kind of deviate from the main subject. You know what I mean? So
on other stuff, I do want to share because I was looking it up, and this popped up, and I thought it was really interesting. So I'm gonna share it. And the question that popped up on Google was, "How does our brain perceive reality?" And it goes back to what we're talking about. And again, Google, I forgot exactly what article or what, but it says your brain predicts what the scene should look like and sound and feel like. Then it generates a hallucination based on these predictions. This hallucination that you experience as the world around you, oh, that's what it is. So this hallucinated, oh, I can't say it, reconstruction of reality is sometimes referred to as the brain's model of the world. So it goes back to the five senses and how we experience the world through it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
So thank you so much for popping up here. Hopefully this won't be the last time we can do a video together. So that'll be cool. And thank you to everybody who showed asked questions and waved. Yeah. So awesome.
Definitely. No, we're definitely gonna do it again. We'll definitely have to think about another interesting topic. There's so many that I want to touch, especially psychedelics. But that's definitely a topic for another day.
I am so down to do a conversation about psychedelics. Even just
talking. Oh yeah, definitely.
Totally down.
Yeah.
That's cool. Okay, so much love, guys. I hope all of you guys have a beautiful week, and I'll text you, Victor.
Awesome. So good. Take care, everybody. Stay safe. All right. Bye.
Bye.